With that, we bring in Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. He has long pushed for the National Guard when it is needed to restore law and order from the 2020 riots. He recommended it. That piece got yanked from the New York Times to earlier this year in Los Angeles. And writing now for FoxNews.com, Trump is right to bring law and order back to D.C. Senator, it's great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the fact that President Trump wants to get in the car and go out and take a look firsthand at what is going on in the streets with these National Guard members in town.
Martha, thanks for having me. I think it's entirely appropriate for President Trump to want to put eyes on what's happening on the streets. No different, for instance, from going to the border to meet with CBP agents there or going to a military base to meet with the troops. These are federal officers, whether they're National Guard that have been called out on federal orders or FBI agents or DEA agents, ICE officers, what have you. And he wants to hear from them and see exactly what they're doing. And frankly, they're doing a great job. The numbers are in now. Since President Trump ordered this crackdown in Washington, D.C. on runaway crime and homelessness, there have been 0 murders. That's a very uncommon situation for Washington over the span of a week plus, because the city, unfortunately, has had a runaway crime problem now going back 10, 15 years. It's gotten much worse since I was first elected to Congress. Thousands of Arkansans go to Washington every year. Arkansas grandparents should be able to take their grandkids to Washington, D.C. and go to Smithsonian's, go to the Lincoln Memorial, go to Arlington National Cemetery without being accosted by hardened criminals or illegal aliens or deranged homeless lunatics. President Trump is taking the appropriate steps to protect what is, after all, a federal city from runaway crime to make sure it's usable and livable for all Americans.
I think we've all seen the degradation of our cities over the last several years. And when you first brought up this idea that maybe this is a role occasionally for the National Guard to provide a sense of security on the streets, which is what they're doing in D.C., do you feel vindicated by what you're seeing now, even though you do see a lot of pushback and protest to their presence?
Martha, I wouldn't say I feel vindicated, but I feel pleased for the residents of Washington, D.C. and the millions of Americans who visit the city every year who can do so now without being accosted on the streets. I hope that remains the case going forward. And the National Guard is never the front line of defense. It's always first the local police. And then if that can't work, then in a state, it's using state resources like state troopers or even the state National Guard. In Washington, D.C., of course, the National Guard is special. It's unique. There is no governor in Washington, D.C., so it answers directly to the president through the Department of the Army. But when you call in the National Guard, they can perform important supporting logistical functions that allow the police, or in this case, federal law enforcement officers like the FBI or the DEA, to go out and arrest hardened criminals or execute search warrants on violent felons. That's an entirely appropriate role, and it's good for the people of Washington, D.C. and all Americans.
Just one last question for you. What goes through your mind as you listen to these protesters and you see the folks that are actually turning out to protest, and who the real victims are in D.C.?
Well, they look to me like a bunch of crazed ideologues who may not even live in Washington, D.C., and almost certainly don't live in the crime-infested parts of Washington, D.C. I bet a lot of them live in very wealthy, nice neighborhoods in Northwest Washington or in the suburbs of Maryland and Virginia. Very easy for them to protest the National Guard or the DEA or ICE arresting hardened felons in Washington, D.C. when they can go back to gated communities in the suburbs.
Yeah. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you very much. We've come a long way from your pulled op-ed in the New York Times back in 2020 suggesting that there might be a need for the Guard at times like this. Thank you, Senator. Good to see you.
Thank you.